Hello, Dr. White.
How are you?
I'm fine. I have a question. You probably answered it a million times about Theodicy. Like, I was involved in a pretty horrific pancake car accident some months ago, but survived unscathed. And there are people that I know, even in my local church, that have suffered crippling injuries. And so, like, by the grace of God, like, I've survived fine, but like, what do I say, or how do I relate to other people that I know where, better people than me that suffered very bad injuries? I mean, it's a difficult topic, I think.
Well, theodicy really has much broader parameters than why one person would survive a car accident and another person is severely injured or another person is killed, because it's the term itself refers to the justification of God in the light of the existence of evil. As it has been well said, there is only one innocent person who has ever suffered and died, and he did it voluntarily. So we recognize some of the basic foundational issues in regards to the fallenness of the world and things like that. But still, it goes to a larger issue, and that is if God had knowledge of all future events, and that's the difference between Orthodox Christianity and open theism and things like that, then what is the function of evil within that economy? And various answers have been given. Open theism is one attempt to get out of using any of those answers. And interestingly enough, one of the chief open theists, one of his openly primary motivations for doing that was the death of his brother in a motorcycle accident. That was very much a part of what developed his thinking on this subject. But the reality is that it seems to me that the clearest biblical texts that address these particular issues are all based upon the idea that God is accomplishing a purpose, and that purpose, we are asked to believe, is worth whatever takes place in time. We may not see in our lifetimes the impact that our lives have had, that the injuries that Joni Eareckson Tada has lived with, that the death of someone either produces in someone else, or that their continued life would have had negative impacts upon other people and things like that. So the point is, we cannot second guess God, in the sense that we do not have sufficient knowledge even of the past and the present to be able to know what God knows about what the relationships of everyone to everyone else is, let alone do we have knowledge of what God's sovereign decree is. We are told that in the end, it will result in the praise of his glorious grace, however that works out. But in our present life, we are given the assurance that God is working everything according to the counsel of his will and for our good. My good may be completely different than somebody else's good. And I've thankfully known people down through the years who suffered greatly, who had great physical infirmities, and yet were tremendous testimonies to the grace of God because they did not complain against God. They saw the goodness of God and the grace of God in what he gives to them, even in their diminished physical capacity or whatever else it might be. And that's a completely different worldview than what is developed from secular thought and what is becoming very, very common even within the church today, where you have my good and my happiness and my joy should be God's highest priority, rather than pleasing God being my highest priority, and whatever he has for me being something that I'm willing to, the burden that I'm willing to bear, knowing that he has a proper purpose in all of these things. And so when dealing with theodicy amongst believers, It's a very edifying topic because you can go into so many examples in Scripture where Joseph learns this, Job learns this, the apostles learn this, Paul learns this, Jesus teaches this. You can find all sorts of stuff like that. Very often, theodicy is something that we're dealing with enemies of the faith who are using it as a reason to reject the existence of God. And you sort of have to, it's not you're taking a different approach, it's just that the examples you're going to be using, you can't assume a common spiritual experience with the atheist, the agnostic, that you can with the Christian. And so when you ask the question, why did I survive an accident and someone else didn't? Fundamentally, it's the same question as why am I alive in this century and not a previous century? Why do I have all the blessings I have in this life and I wasn't alive in 1347 in Florence when the plague swept through and didn't die a horrible death in 12 hours from the pneumonic form of the plague? It was God's purpose that the plague strike where and when and how it did at that time. And if you don't have that perspective, then it's all just a random world. It's just there's no answers to any of these things. When Christians basically try to come up with a different answer, it always ends up being a sub-biblical answer.